Australia and India have both had tensions with China lately. Both of them for different reasons, but the tensions have exposed both of their vulnerabilities. So now Australia and China have signed a new defensive deal that will strengthen both of the countries' position in the South China Sea. But what exactly does the new agreement do, and will China respect it at all? That's all coming up in today's video. Alright, so after the last few months of trade war between China and Australia, it kind of makes sense that Australia is now going out to try to strengthen the relationship with her allies in and around the South China Sea. The tariffs that China has put on Australia has been hurting the Australian economy at a time where the nation was already suffering from the pandemic. And at the same time, India has been feeling threatened militarily for the tensions that are rising on the border between China and India. And remember, this all comes at a time where China is trying to gain more influence in the South China Sea and the region. So it kind of makes sense that India and Australia are now signing this new defense treaty after all of this. And my bet is that you can expect to see Australia make moves for other allies in the region in the coming weeks. Alright, so let's read some of what the CNN article has to say about this new defense treaty. India and Australia sign pacts to strengthen military ties as tensions simmer in South China Sea. The article goes on to read, India and Australia signed two bilateral military agreements Thursday in the first step in deepening of the defense relationship between the two Indo-Pacific powers, according to statements from both countries. The deals were announced after a virtual summit between Prime Ministers Scott Morrison of Australia and Narendra Modi of India. India is comprehensively and rapidly committed to strengthening its relations with Australia. This is not only important for our two nations, but also for the Indo-Pacific region and the whole world, Modi said. As Modi says here, this really is important for the two nations, but also for the Indo-Pacific region. You see, China has been increasing its dominance in and around the South China Sea lately, both economically and militarily. At the same time, they're slowly taking over Hong Kong, which is the 10th biggest export and import economy in the whole world. So you can kind of understand why these nations are looking for allies in the Indian Ocean and in the Pacific Ocean as well. And I do believe that that is the main reason for signing this defensive agreement right now. Alright, so back to the article. I'm just gonna finish up this section of the article right here. We are committed to an open, inclusive, prosperous Indo-Pacific, and India's role in that region, our region, will be critical in the years ahead, Morrison added. The new pacts, known as the Australia-India Mutual Logistics Support Arrangement and the Defense Science and Technology Implementing Arrangement, they should really come up with shorter ways to say these, come as military tensions increase in the Indo-Pacific region, which includes in the South China Sea, where China has been fortifying its positions on disputed islands. A joint post-summit statement said both countries share a vision of a free, open, inclusive, and rules-based Indo-Pacific region to support the freedom of navigation, overflight, and peaceful and cooperative use of the seas. Now, make no mistake, China is no big fan of this agreement, and they won't like these two countries beginning to make rules for how to behave in a sea that China considers its own. So this Reuters article goes more into what the agreement actually says, but I'm just gonna point out the single most important thing. This deal between India and Australia is almost identical to the one that India already has with the US. Primarily, it allows the use of each other's military bases in the regions. And effectively, this means that the US now has lawful access to much more of the South China Sea than they did before. And since that's the case, I imagine that the next move will be to add more countries to this list, especially countries that are right in the middle of the South China Sea. I will admit that the last part is a bit speculative, but it just kind of makes sense if you follow the strategy that they are implementing here. So China will have to walk a fine line from now on. They can't just keep pressuring these smaller nations in the South China Sea as they've done for a long time now, because these countries might actually jump on this defense agreement, and that would mean that the US, through Australia and India, would have direct access to their military bases, coming one step closer to the actual waters of China. So I don't want to be too one-sided. I do want to say that China has long tried to lay claim to the South China Sea, especially with the 9-dash line. I won't go too much into detail about the 9-dash line, but I will leave you guys a link up here to a video that I made where it explains the 9-dash line more in details. So looking at this through the eyes of China, the US is making a lot of moves that will put them militarily within very close distance to the mainland of China. I'm talking about places like Japan, where the US has a few of these aircraft carriers just sitting around, these massive warships, just sitting around saying that the crew was struck by coronavirus, so they're just gonna have to be parked there for a while. I mean, I'm not really sure if the US would tolerate the CCP sending a few aircraft carriers to Hawaii and then just sitting around there for some time. But China has been bullying a lot of smaller nations to gain influence in the region lately. And countries like India and Australia just looks to have had enough over the last few months. Alright, remember to subscribe to the channel if you liked the video. I'm almost at 50 subscribers, which might sound a little small, but I'm really happy about it. So if you could help me get to that achievement, I would be very happy. That would be really awesome. Thank you so much for watching the video and have a great day. I'll see you guys tomorrow.